Hello, everyone, and a very good afternoon to all present here. I'm your host, Khushi Mudgal, and I welcome you all to today's TechGig webinar on global product leaders driving innovation, talent, and tech from India worldwide. It's an absolute pleasure to have all of you join us today. To facilitate this session, folks, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker for today's session, Mr. Deepak Visweswaraiah, Senior Vice President, Platform Engineering and Site Managing Director at Pegasystems. He is a seasoned technology leader with over 30 years of experience in enterprise software and global engineering. Currently serving as Senior Vice President and Managing Director at Pegasystems, he leads core platform development from India while driving product innovation and client engagement. He has a proven track record of establishing global in house centers for multinational companies, mentoring startups, and fostering transformative in house approaches in technology and business leadership. His achievements have earned him recognition as one of the top 50 business growth leaders 2022 and multiple leadership and innovation awards. Throughout his career, he has held senior leadership roles at NetApp India, EMC India, and in the United States with companies like Adobe Systems and i2 Technologies. He has also played a key role in defining NetApp's data fabric strategy, driving global transformation initiatives, and building world class work environments. It's such a pleasure having you, Deepak, here with me today.
Oh, thank you, Kushi. That's a wonderful introduction, and I hope I can live up to that introduction. And then I want to extend a very, very warm welcome to everyone, and thank you, Kushi, for having me here, and thanks to TechGig for having me on this show. So I'm so looking forward to it.
Yes, definitely, Deepak. And now about the session. In today's conversation, we'll be exploring how India's tech ecosystem has evolved from being a delivery destination to becoming a driving force of global innovation. As enterprises scale their engineering capabilities, India's product leaders are now shaping strategies, talent, and technologies that influence organizations worldwide. This session will uncover how leaders are building globally distributed teams that deliver innovation at scale, fostering cultures of experimentation and excellence, and driving transformation from India for the world. We will also discuss how leadership models are evolving from operational management to strategic enablement, empowering teams to own innovation, collaborate across borders, and solve real world enterprise challenges. By the end of this session, we aim to understand what truly sets India's global product leaders apart and how they continue to bridge innovation, talent, and technology to build the next generation of world class solutions. I would also like to notify that the session is scheduled for an hour. We'll hear valuable insights from Deepak, and in the final 15 minutes, we'll open the floor for an interactive question and answer round. You all can please feel free to share your questions anytime in the Q&A window. And with that, it's time that we get started. So now I'd request you, Deepak, to take it forward.
Thank you, Kushi. So I hope you can all see what I'm sharing on the screen here from my desktop, right? If you actually just even see the title, how global product leaders are scaling, there are three things, right? We are talking about innovation, talent, and technology. Very funny thing, right? A few years ago, probably most people would have seen another, or a different set of parameters that we're talking about. And obviously, one that you would have seen there is cost. I think over the past decade or more, probably the last 15, 20 years, India has actually moved on from being a cost efficient delivery hub to really becoming a strategic center for product development, a strategic center for things in terms of from a platform thinking perspective or building that kind of leadership, right? I think that's what is very exciting. Today, the global enterprises are scaling their most ambitious technology roadmaps actually from India. I will give you, let me start with a story. I think we all watched with pride last year. India's, one of the, most important missions, the Chandrayaan 3 mission if you will, right? When the spacecraft really softly landed on the moon at the South Pole, it wasn't just about a triumph of science. It was a masterclass in innovation done in a different way. The entire mission cost probably less than the budget of a Hollywood space movie for that matter, right? If you were to look at it, what made it possible wasn't really just technology. It was a mindset. The team worked with a clear purpose, a clear, cross-functional collaboration, and kind of a relentless problem solving under various constraints they came across. That's exactly what's happening with this title today, right? That's exactly what's happening across India's global product centers today. Even though that was really about a government organization in India doing things that way, would that inspiration actually has come to the entire GCC sector, if you will, right? What we're doing today, innovation that is cost efficient, that is outcome driven, that is globally relevant. We're not just building for the world anymore. I think what we have to realize that we are building, with the world from India for that matter, right? I think that is making up a huge difference. So we're not really, as I said, no longer just a delivery center. It is driving, there are so many GCCs where today we are driving end-to-end innovation, building the next generation talent, and having the platform leadership for the world. So many different platforms coming out, from the centers here. The Indian technology market as such is set to become the fourth largest. You guys probably know that we're getting to be the fourth largest economy, highlighting the strategic role that we are all looking at in powering essentially what you can term as global innovation, right? And the concentration of the technology talent, the concentration of the tech talent here in India, which is probably a huge differentiator for us, combined with sustained kind of global investments that we are looking at, or we are seeing that is happening, is what is reshaping how products are imagined, how products are built, how products are scaled from our GCCs here in India, right? So that's also a lens, if you will, through which we will explore the topic today. That's the lens that I would want to explore as we move forward. Okay, so as we move, let's make it a little bit engaging. Like Kushi mentioned as far as earlier, that if you have questions, start putting them in, and then we will get to them in a little bit. But I just wanted to kick off with a poll just to understand some of your views. So I just want to understand what is the top priority, what's on top of mind, for you guys as you look at it. So Kushi, maybe we can pull up the first poll.
Yes. So we have the first poll on the stage, which is which of these areas is your top priority right now? And the options to vote are scaling AI and automation, and building developer first platforms, and expanding to global markets.
Yeah.
So all of you can vote. You all have a minute. And post that, we'll be receiving your responses and moving forward. And all of you are also requested to send us all your questions in the Q&A window so that we can take up them towards the end in the last 10 to 15 minutes.
For some reason, I think the first two are showing as scaling AI and automation.
Yes, it's the same.
I think the second one should have been building stronger tech talent.
Plus platforms.
Yeah, very, very interesting things going on in the industry today. So while you guys are answering that, we can talk a little bit about in terms of how AI and automation is impacting all of our daily lives, daily work stuff. In terms of even if you are a developer, how much are you leveraging all of these to be more efficient? Every company wants to do that. How are you building the talent and then training them for something like this, right? How are we generating these platforms, as well as what are we doing from a global mindset point of view, right? How do we expand, build here, and then expand it to global platforms? So those are all very, very interesting choices.
So we have received these votes from the
Mm.
attendees, and
All
we
right.
have 25%, like we have the greater percentage for scaling AI and automation.
Right. Awesome. This is good to understand. So I will actually kind of probably tailor a little bit of my conversations around a couple of these topics that may be top of mind for you guys. And let's actually dive right in. So let me see. All right. So you know India's role in terms of from a global landscape. I believe currently we are at that inflection point. I think it is very important to unpack how and understand a little bit in terms of how this shift has taken place. How is this shaping up, and why does it even matter today? Why should we be thinking about this? Right? If you think about it, over the last 2 decades, India has moved from it all depends on how long you've actually been in the industry, perhaps. But when I started, everything was all about being able to build a back office. So we have really moved from a back office function to a core innovation hub, where we are designing and architecting solutions for the future. This structural shift is reshaping really how global enterprises actually build and scale products. It's become an integral part of their plan, right? So today, more than 1,800 GCCs are there, and over 5 million, professionals work in these GCCs that are driving the Fortune 500 strategies from India, right? The scale and the capability are positioning India as potentially a global product powerhouse. There is really no other country that can post the that can really you know put the talent up at the same level as we do from a scale point of view, right? Perhaps other than the United States, of course, right? If you look at that, beyond that, the ability to be able to have technology knowledge, the ability to be able to have language proficiency, and all of the qualities that are actually required, is not something that most countries can actually offer. So engineering, research and development probably account for 55% of the GCC's growth today. Earlier it would have been much smaller number when we were mostly driving a lot of back office functions for that matter, right? Now there is a lot more core innovation, so which is really the majority now. More than 55% actually is categorized as research and development, right? This kind of highlights really how enterprises are really leveraging the India centers, embedding India at the center of their innovation plans and programs for that matter, right? Before, it used to be filled with BPO type of work, filled with really sustaining type of work, even if it was engineering. Not that it doesn't happen anymore. Yes, yes, of course, there's always a part of it that would need to be done, but that's not the bulk of the work. Now it is actually research and development is kind of the bulk of the work. So so talent and technology, and a strong playbook, having that strong playbook that continues and combines technology depth with the product thinking. I think that is very important. The product thinking had to change a lot. That is one of the things that the GCCs had to learn, moving away from a services approach to a product thinking, an ability to be able to build products for the world, together with whether it is AI, whether it is cloud, whether it is automation, all of these phenomena that is accelerating the momentum in what we're doing today, right? As we look at these kind of shifts, it is important to understand what will make the best or the biggest difference for leaders in this room, as leaders, as you all are looking at in terms of how to go about or what to do. These are things that we want to think about, right? So, what is going on in the industry? we are we are seeing an unprecedented and an incredible growth in the GCC ecosystem. When we talk about GCCs, by the way, it stands for Global Capability Center, and I'm pretty sure you all are very familiar with that term. Most usually, they are multinational companies that are setting up their centers here, that are owned by them, that are operated by them. We had a lot of the terminology used to call them probably captive centers earlier, so it's gone through some terminology changes in various ways, for that matter. And then the latest term we're using is a GCC, right? So the growth we are seeing is not accident. It didn't happen by accident. There is a lot of work behind it, right? And it's not incidental either. It actually reflects some structural shifts in how global enterprises are actually building their product R&D strength from India. A lot of the companies are have actually built into their plans, whether it is 3 or 5 year, what have you. These are actually all being built into the global, GCC plans, for that matter, right? India's GCCs and product center footprint is expanding rapidly, as Fortune 500 companies and global, especially cloud vendors, the service providers, if you will, strengthen their leadership presence. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then how they are actually deepening the R&D operations in the country. That's one of the phenomena that you will see, that is actually already happening, as well as will continue to happen, right? There are definitely competition in terms of what the state and national initiatives are coming up with, what they are actually offering in attracting these high-tech design R&D, GCC investments, right, creating a pretty strong environment for the global players to scale, but also for our Indian talent to excel, right? You would have seen a lot of new initiatives coming up in the areas of whether it is semiconductors, manufacturing, yeah, ICOEs, of course, and the entire service provider market as far as cloud, operations go, and then what have you. These are some of the newer drivers that are driving a lot of the GCCs to come in and put up their centers in India. We expect, there are reports that's actually showing by 2030, we are expected to have more than 2,400 GCCs. Right? Today, we are about 1,800, and then think about it in terms of in the next 2 to 3 years, we will jump to about 2,400 GCCs. That's a lot of growth, and we have to be mindful of how we serve this market size of $100 billion with 2,400 GCCs, and that means we need a lot of talent. That means we need a lot of innovation. That means we need a lot of ecosystem play to be able to actually help this. Right? Research costs, are around 70% lower than in some of the other markets, some of the Western markets, which is one of the reasons why, if you actually have the talent, the innovation part of it is what the biggest return on investment would be. So that is why, if you can do innovation 70% lower, yeah, you will be envied in the eyes of, some of the world leaders, including the U.S. president, for that matter, right? So, there are things of that phenomena that will be, continuing to happen, making India a preferred destination for, especially innovation at scale, right? With about 1.5 million engineers coming out every year, India has one of the largest young engineering population, globally, for that matter, right? So that is a huge advantage that the country carries. A vibrant academic system, a language advantage, as I talked about, a strong set of system integrators. I mean, we have the best SI ecosystem probably in the world, and the industry to scale, further to strengthen its position as a global innovation hub for the country, right? I think those are all very, real time things that we are actually seeing, that is happening today. Um, so what is causing this phenomena? Why are people coming to this country? And for all the things that we have talked about, right? Let's peel that a little bit and then look at a couple of different catalysts that are causing this phenomenon. Okay. Cloud adoption in India, have noticed is really accelerating now. Both, whether it is consumer related, whether it is business related, whether it is B2B, B2C, or government related. Every government initiative is actually related to being able to provide citizen services that are digital, and then it's all online and it's all actually on the cloud, right? So cloud adoption is accelerating at an unprecedented speed here in India. And this actually is reshaping how enterprises really design their architecture, to suit that technology, defining your vendor strategies. Whom do you go with? And then how do you plan that? And then how do you operate at scale? Right? All of those things come into play. The public cloud services market in itself in India is expected to be a 30 plus billion dollars in 2029. That's kind of what it's predicted to be, growing at a rate of 22.6% CAGR. And so that's a phenomenal growth. Most companies don't grow at a 22 plus percent CAGR for that matter, right? This kind of rapid growth is creating both opportunities as well as new architectural priorities that we are talking about, right? I'm sure some of you actually saw and felt AWS having an outage earlier this week. I don't know how many of you noticed it, but certainly Monday, earlier this week. In fact, even some of our services at Pega globally, especially in the U.S. East, had some challenges. Right, these kind of challenges that we practically saw earlier this week are pushing the boundaries of architecture when systems in need to work at the scale that we want it to work. So enterprises are prioritizing prioritizing their data control, their AI capabilities, which is kind of fueling demand for what we refer to as sovereign cloud solutions. This, what I see is actually influencing how the products are architected, how we think about the scale and the geography today, with stronger emphasis on whether it is compliance, whether it is security, whether it is governance, whether it is trust, what have you. You have to think about all of those, with sovereign cloud as a driver for that matter, right? Teams actually need to think about in terms of designing for hybrid and sovereign deployments with essentially multi-cloud portability. You should be able to go from one service provider to another at any point in time as a default. Hybrid architecture ensures in terms of seamless integration, if you will, between whether somebody is on-prem, whether somebody in cloud, or have in between the two for that matter. And then all of this while multi-cloud readiness provides the flexibility across platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP, others, what have you, right? There are multiple vendors offering these cloud services. Now, why does this matter? Of course, sovereign cloud adoption is not just a technology piece, right? It is actually something that is demanded by countries, right? It impacts performance, it impacts compliance, it impacts customer trust, making it a critical factor in how products actually scale globally, from India. And then it's also a question of what are the government's policies are in being able to establish these sovereign clouds, and then how it is all architected for that matter, right? So that I thought was an interesting concept I wanted to share with you all today. Now, if cloud was the catalyst, let's say, for scale, the next big thing I'm sure that we can all unlock is how generative AI or agentic AI, or how low code tools are transforming how we actually build products, how as engineers we actually architecture, how architect or how we build any solutions for that matter, right? This is what is going on right now. This is what the everyone's and is on everyone's mind today, I'm sure. So India's generative AI ecosystem, if you will, is moving at an incredibly an incredible pace for that matter, right? We have already crossed, as I last read, about 750 million in cumulative investments since 2023. This has probably seen one of the fastest ramp in terms of investments. We are actually also seeing this payout across product teams where generative AI is not just an add-on, it's actually fundamentally reshaping how one builds software, how software is imagined, how software is coded, how it is tested, how it is delivered. It is actually impacting every persona, for that matter, in the industry. The industry, today is buzzing about agentic AI, right? I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with it. AI agents that can actually reason, that can plan, that can take, independent action once it is actually has all the required essentials. Everyone wants these AI agents to be part of their, ecosystem for that matter, to be able to make themselves more efficient. But there is a massive gap, if you will, between what you see demos at conferences or wherever, and what actually works in an enterprise reality. So you have to really think about, okay, am I seeing a demo or am I seeing a product at work? It's not all about, in AI we say it's not all about prompts. While prompt engineering is a new skill set, you need to understand the prompt, but you also need to be able to have a prompt that works the same every time you give the prompt, for that matter, right? So in fact, in some contexts, we have seen productivity improvements of 30 to 40% when developers you know leverage these AI tools. Leverage it in terms of whether it is during development, whether it is during testing, whether it is during deployments, whatever the case may be, or whether you are building something for an end user to make them more efficient. At the same time, these low code, no code platforms are also opening the gates for people who are not necessarily experts at coding, right? There are business users who have a wonderful idea of the domain. They actually, understand the domain very well. Since they understand the domain very well, they bring the business side of the equation, and can actually leverage some of these tools to be able to actually build, applications for that matter, or collaborate with IT, collaborate with the engineering, teams to be able to build those applications for that matter. So the impact, yes, you will actually see some rapid prototyping cycles. What used to probably take months to build on an MVP now, takes few weeks, if not days, to that, right? So, one of the things, for example, what we have done, one of biggest innovations is something called as Pegasystems blueprint, where IT and business can really work together to be able to rapidly prototype applications, and then actually eventually build an application that can be used in runtime. Right? This convergence of generative AI and low code is creating what I refer to as a developer kind of multiplier effect, right? So smaller teams are now delivering much bigger scale, at a much better speed, for that matter, right? You're doing things better, you're doing things faster, and that's exactly the kind of acceleration that will define what we refer to as the next the next frontier, or the next decade of innovation from India. So for leaders in this room, this means talent models need to evolve, right? These talent models need to evolve. That the same thing doesn't work. What worked in the last 15, 20 years may not work now. The best organizations will blend AI, augmented developers with empowered, citizen developers, some citizen creators, what have you, effectively doubling the innovation, capacity, capability, what have you. Right? So, of course, nothing comes easy, right? So with this kind of scale, with this kind of innovation, definitely it comes with equal, complex challenges that we look at. So I want to call out, four challenges, if you will, that you might be seeing on the screen. The first one I talk about is talent, the talent acquisition and retention. And we all know why this is so important. Everything we do is typically, especially in the software world, is dependent on the talent. Product minded engineers are, I kind of call them gold dust, if you will. They are like, that important in some of the tier one cities and hubs, what have you. The attrition can be as high as 15 to 20% or what have you. Retaining this talent requires, it's not about just compensation. It's not about, people don't work for money. It actually also calls for purpose. It calls for career growth. It all, calls for leadership, visibility in terms of what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing, right? So that one is a big challenge, right? Second is the platform complexity. As we scale in terms of the hybrid architectures and microservices, we all know and work on those architectures. But what happens is that the technical debt actually also piles up pretty quickly. And without a disciplined approach for platform engineering, without a clear, ownership, this becomes kind of, a silent killer for the speed. It really, it's kind of, something that is at your ankle that is slowing you down. And then especially when you're building a platform, you have to keep the, ecosystem in mind, and then not just what you're doing. So the third challenge I talk about is regulation and data sovereignty. We talked about the clouds, sovereign cloud earlier. Yeah, and then of course it also depends on where, that the policies dictate where the data can be. Compliance is a moving target because it keeps changing, and it moves along with the times in terms of being able to improve compliance as we go. Whether it is, you talk about data localization, talk about privacy, talk about security, or cross border, data flow restrictions. What data can go from where to where, whether something can cross a boundary or not. We have to really design flexibility into this architecture that we work with in order to address that data sovereignty. And lastly, if not, not necessarily last, but finally, the speed and quality, speed versus quality trade-off. There is always a pressure to ship faster. Of course, that is always there, and that is real. But sustained success, really, in my books, depends on a balancing, innovation velocity with engineering excellence. If you put things out there that doesn't work, that doesn't that the customers don't really, appreciate it, and it can fall flat. I often share, I'm a big F1 fan. I often actually share this quote with, a lot of, people that I meet with. It's a quote by an F1 driver called Mario Andretti, and his quote reads, "If everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough." So think about that a little, right? I mean, you step back and think about, if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. That's what is required in today's world. You've got to be fast and then get it out there, but at the same time, you want to be under control, right? So you have to think about what is that MVP, and how do you really get that out, as quickly as possible with the best quality that you can actually cherish, right? At Pega, we found that the strong DevOps culture, and technical leadership are key to managing, this kind of an equilibrium, right? Um, Good. So that's really talking a little bit about challenges, right? And let's talk about, we talked about talent, and I thought I wanted to touch base a little bit on how do you really manage that talent? What is that talent blueprint? How do you build and nurture such world-class teams, that you can actually be proud of, or you can actually say it is equal to any team anywhere else for that matter, right? Okay. First, what I would do, or how do I look at differentiating this talent and then building the blueprint for this talent retention is all about look to hire for product thinking, not just technical skills. You don't want just Java, experts. You don't want just guys who can actually write great code. You want somebody who can actually think product. The best engineers are those who understand the customer, who think in terms of outcomes and not just output. It's not about writing 500 lines of code a day. It's actually what are we achieving out of those that we're doing. Technical skills can actually be taught, I believe, and but the product intuition and that mindset is something that is very important and needs to be nurtured in my mind. Second, investing in learning. You want to build an organization that is continuous learning, that has a continuous learning ecosystem. The most progressive organizations are creating such, programs in-house, or be able to, work with external agencies to be able to bring such learning ecosystem into their companies, right? Whether it is product management, whether it's in cloud, whether it's in AI, whatever else for that matter. The third thing is to embrace a blended team model. Bring the right team together, a healthy mix of different type of people in a Scrum team would actually make it work very well. Figure out in terms of whether you want specialists for niche skills versus building some with general skill set in the team. And finally, design retention strategies that truly matter, right? It's not just about throwing money. Today's top performers actually, in what I've seen, value growth, value impact that they are actually bringing, value mentorship for more than other benefits that we may offer, right? So clarity in terms of career paths, exposure to global roles, global projects, ability for people to play a global role sitting here in India, and then being flexible with working models. All of these kind of things actually drive that retention, in my mind, a lot more, right? Treating talent development as a business investment. It's that's not going to be an HR thing. You have to think about it as a business leader, and then it's the business leader's responsibility to think about that as a business investment, and then how the global organizations are gaining competitive edge from India. Okay. Now we've talked about people. Maybe cover a couple of minutes with respect to technology, in terms of what stack do you want to use and how do you want to go about it, right? So let's turn to that a little bit. The stack in itself, is something that underpins how global products are being built out of India, right? Some of the leading product organizations are converging on this whole cloud native foundation. Things that are built on Kubernetes, things that are built on serverless computing architectures, things that are built on managed services architectures, right? Those are all things that are progressing at a breakneck speed. This dramatically reduces your operational overhead when you use those kind of architecture, while you can potentially look at ensuring a scale that you want to achieve. Next, apart from the cloud native foundation, is your AI ML integration layer, perhaps. So mature ML ops is a pipelines is a big thing. Using machine learning to be able to manage your pipelines based on the patterns is a fantastic efficient way to do things. Stronger governance. You have AI observability that can help you become so much more better. All of those things, right? That would be my second thing from technology stack point of view. Then comes security. You want to build a zero trust architecture. You want to build a security first architecture and mindset. right? From zero test networking to automated CI/CD, security scans, what have you. Compliance is now have to be built into the DNA of how you think about product, right? It can't be an afterthought, so it has to be done right the first time. Finally, observability and analytics, distributed tracing, real-time monitoring, all of these things, right? And then data-driven insights allow a lot of the teams to see across complex systems, and then they look to prioritize, those features based on actual user behavior. So you get observability data, and then with that analytics, you can decide, what is actually the user using, and then how can you do, prioritize those, in that context, right? That's what we're talking about. I know I'm running late a little bit, but let me see if I can cover this very quickly. So, a very small execution framework to think about. I'm pretty sure this is something that is very, it works a little bit different for different companies. It's moving from the what to how. How do you want to build a foundation phase in 0 to 3 months? How do you want to really get to a build phase? How do you want to get to the scale? How do you really go about building a part of your GCC in that sense, right? That's a framework, that is something that is available to you today. And then many people actually have done this. The real strength of the framework lies in the learning loops, the retrospectives, the OKR reviews, then the tight alignment between the global teams and here for that matter, right? So and then this kind of phased approach kind of balances a little bit of ambition and sustainability, right? So as we kind of bring this together, I want to leave you with one overarching message, if you will, right? The path forward for global product leadership truly runs through India. I think we can all actually say that safely. It's no longer a peripheral delivery engine. It is a strategic product nerve center of the world. And we are all responsible to kind of make that successful. The opportunity ahead for us is incredible, but it requires a mindset change. We talked about that, right? We must treat India teams as product centers, not as cost centers, not as delivery centers. That means investing in world-class talent programs that we talked about. That means investing in the right technology stack. That means investing in the right architecture, and AI-enabled platforms and what have you. Most importantly, also fostering deep two-way collaboration between India and the global headquarters. See, you have to be aligned. You still have to be driving the strategy for the company. You still have to be aligned. And one of the biggest mistakes you can actually do, in my opinion, is to go away and set up something different as a charter for your GCC versus what the company is doing. It has got to be aligned. It's got to be the same as what the company's strategy is in terms of what you do, right? Organizations that master this kind of playbook, I believe will unlock an unprecedented velocity, if you will, and will have a competitive advantage. And that's the vision we are driving every single day in the GCC leadership circles, if you will. I'll just leave you with a closing thought, and then if we can take some questions after that. The India story is no longer about potential. The India story is about leadership, is about the talent, and it's probably, I look at it as a privilege for all of us to be shaping this story together and look at the next few years as an inflection point that I talked about in the beginning, which actually defines probably the next decade, as far as how we develop. So, with that, let me pause there and see if there are any questions that we want to take, and then feel free to, I'll let Kushi moderate that part of it, and then so Kushi, anything that we want to talk about. Hopefully, this was interesting for all of you.
Yes, Deepak, these were very amazing insights. You've shared such forward looking perspectives on how India's tech ecosystem is actually evolving from being a delivery destination to also becoming a driving force of global innovation. And also, as you mentioned, that enterprises scale their engineering capabilities, India's product leaders are really now shaping strategies, talent, and technologies that influence organizations worldwide.
Yep.
So, a big thank you to you for sharing such insightful perspectives on this theme. And it was great to have you to let you discuss on this perspective. And now we've also received some excellent questions
Question.
from the audience. We'll take a few of them, and they're available in the question panel for reference. I'll
Sure.
read it out for them. So the first question that we have is from Mahesh. He has put up that what role do continuous learning and upskilling play in preparing Indian talent for global tech mandates?
Yeah, good question. This is one of the four important ones that I talked about. In fact, not only just about individuals, it's also about companies building a learning culture. And it is not about learning for the sake of learning, right? It's also about progressing with the right learning capabilities. Like think about what is actually happening today. A lot of the people actually say, okay, is AI going to take away my jobs? Well, that's that there have been a lot of technologies that have come, and humans are very good at leveraging those technologies to be able to make ourselves better, right? So that's the same thing today. We want to be able to leverage what AI offers, what whether it is generative AI, whether it is agentic AI, what have you, offers, to be able to improve what we do in the value chain. We can actually do things that we did in the last few years. Probably we can do that a lot more efficiently, which allows us to do a lot more things. I gave you guys an example of let's say Pegasystems blueprint, which allows you to actually create a prototype in hours, for that matter, right? Now, does that mean we don't do anything else, or does that mean it takes away people's work? No, the learning capability is central to the progression, especially more so in our technical talent here in the country, as we move up to the scale, because the scale comes only from the talent having to learn new things as they're being as they're being invented, right? So to me, it is one of the top 3 4 important aspects that an organization has to focus on, to build a mindset of learning, to build a curiosity mindset, if you will, and to be able to continue to learn, to ask questions, to understand, why am I building this? Who is going to use it? Who is the customer, and what are they? If I understand, okay, what I'm doing today is going to save somebody's life because it's used in a hospital somewhere, in a hospital management system or whatever I have a different perspective of what I'm doing, right? If I'm writing something that is used in a let's say a nuclear power plant, that has a different perspective. I know I better be right in the line code that I'm writing. So I think it is an incredibly important aspect of how we grow.
Yes, Deepak, and it's actually the way to move forward with it.
Yes.
So now moving forward to the next question by Gary. He wants to ask that what's one mindset shift you think every developer or product leader in India should adopt to build for global markets?
Great question. I think I talked a little bit about it during my talk. It is that product mindset. I think that is one of the bigger shifts for us in thinking about product and platform mindset, in terms of, we've been very used to doing things that we were told to do. We have in the last few years changed that to be able to say, what, maybe you can do it in a different way. Maybe this is a better way of doing it. I have a better way to design this. To be able to think about it, you actually need that product mindset. You actually need to understand the customer obsession part of it. Who is using this and why are they using it, which will give you that mindset change, right? In terms of, rather than being able to do what you're told, it is actually great to be able to question the status quo, be able to question or ask yourself in terms of, can this be done better? Do I know a better way of doing it, right? And the idea of being able to architect products for the global consumption, that is even more important. I think that was part of the question. Is it is incredibly important to have that product mindset, to be able to make sure that it is not just built for India. It is not just built for a local, economy. It is actually built for global consumptions, right? So the biggest area of growth for us are those B2B, products that we can actually develop from here that can actually be used everywhere. The GCCs are doing. We also want some of the startups, some of the Indian companies to be able to develop that mindset where we are developing products that can actually be used anywhere. So the world becomes the market and not just India. Mhm.
Right, Deepak. And you
Mhm.
have depicted the problem so amazingly that, of course, we are looking forward to addressing this problem with this particular perspective now.
Right.
So, moving forward with the next question, which is from Suresh. He's asking that can we say still this resource cost is major driver even for the shift and focus on GCC expansions in India?
Well, my own opinion, right, is stop focusing on the cost. It will come. We can actually do research 70% better, with lesser cost. So my thinking is don't ever go with a pitch in terms of I can do it for, like, I can do this for less. Okay. Let's actually, most of the conversations I have with any global leaders, most of the discussions I have with other companies, with customers, what have you, is never about I can do it cheaper for you. It's about I can actually develop the product that you need. I can actually innovate as fast as anyone can. I can actually bring that talent at scale, that no one else can, right? And by the way, I can do this, right? I mean, I can do this at a much better cost, but the cost part of it will come as long as we execute something well, like the Chandrayaan mission that I talked about when I actually started. I mean, nobody in the world ever expected them to actually finish the mission in that with the success that they had, as well as with the cost that they achieved. Now, all GCCs, I'll be honest with you, all GCCs actually have this advantage. So you don't have to worry about whether people understand globally. Do people understand that we have a cost advantage? But that's not necessarily what you lead with, right? In my opinion, you lead with the innovation, you lead with the technology, you lead with the talent. Those will give you all the arsenal to win the war.
Right, Deepak. And he's also asking another question that how can we differentiate GCC from being called ODC?
uh, that's a very good question. Actually, I have banished the word outsourcing from my dictionary. I never use that word. Or if I see someone using that word, I will actually stop them and say, you know what, no, let's not use that terminology. We don't use that terminology. We don't outsource anything, right? We are part of the company. So GCCs, that's another mindset thing, right? As we talked about, the ODCs are gone. That is done by service providers who used to do it the way 20 years ago, where they built a part of their office and provided a space for somebody to operate out of them or what have you. Yes, there are still providers who will actually do something for you. If you are a company trying to set up a GCC, they will do it for a couple of years and then actually transfer it to you and things like that. But to the most part, now there is a good playbook. There is a good understanding of how do you go about building a GCC. And the key thing in terms of how do you differentiate ODC versus GCC, the GCCs are ones that are aligned globally. ODCs are ones where things are thrown over the wall and say, okay, do this thing for me, and something is done and delivered back. That's gone. You don't want to develop a mindset of that nature. What you want to do is to do it in conjunction with the global headquarters, and the global teams in terms of working as part of the team, and and really drive the strategy of the company, not think about smaller things. Think about what we also refer to as enterprise mindset. How do you understand what is important to the company at a high level and be able to drive along with that strategy? So The ODCs are passe in my mind, and we need to look at it as that, and we need to, if there are GCC leaders on the call, I would definitely encourage them to be able to educate anyone, for that matter, to kind of leave that terminology behind and move over to a mindset that has a global mindset, that has a enterprise mindset, to think about really, working together and then not as a separate unit.
Yeah, Deepak, and that's a really great perspective to actually look at it that way, I have to say.
And
So,
my passion, I'm passionate about it, and so it may come across in terms of, my voice, but it is something that I think will make us stand apart.
right, absolutely, Deepak. All right, so moving forward, there's just last two questions that we'll be taking up. This one is by Shruti. She's asking that leveraging new technologies and continuous evolving is integral part of software development, but it demands cost and time. And clients always don't agree, and also not all companies are investing in upskilling of their employees. So, what is your input on this?
Yeah, well, that's a tough spot to be in, right? If the companies are not willing to, invest in learning, what have you. One thing I would tell is as individuals, we have a responsibility to worry about our own careers. Nobody else owns your career other than yourself, right? So one is, as an individual, whether a company offers or not is something that you want to look at today. The ability for learning capabilities that are on offer, that are potentially free or at a small cost, is enormous compared to what it was, let's say, 15, 20 years ago, right? Any information or enablement that you need is more or less available in a lot of forums. So one, I would say, as an individual, always think about whether you have other support or not. You need to worry about your career. So you've got to go find a plan in terms of what am I going to learn, what am I going to develop in, how am I going to carve out some time for it, whatever. One. Number two, there is also something called as an influencing circle, and in terms of how do you show some things that to a company that may not be investing in such capabilities to change their mind, being those change agents. Some of the change agents in a company can actually come together, show the value of what that learning capability is, be able to deliver. There are several companies who have actually changed their mindset to be able to bring in that kind of culture, right? Those are probably two things I would say in order to make it better, for themselves.
Yes, Deepak, and that's actually a great input to note that accordingly revisit all of our plans and reskilling and upskilling and all of that things that we are relearning for this new landscape that we are stepping into. All
Absolutely.
right, so now there's the last question for this session, which is by Sapna. She's asking that what are some key success stories that highlight this shift towards enterprise grade innovation coming out of India?
Oh, there are so many. Whether you talk about it in terms of companies like Microsoft, or companies like GE, I can talk about companies like Pega in terms of what we do. The fact that we probably have 65% of engineering that happens just out of India. The AI COE for us is back, is actually based out of Bangalore, right here, where I'm standing today. And our entire AI strategy for the company is actually, is actually delivered out of here. We build the infrastructure, we build in the COE. They decide what models we use. They decide what is the layer in between, the LLMs, and between our layer of the code that we write in our products or what have you. So, I mean, those kind of innovations, they are actually working on the latest LLMs that are not even out into the market yet, and in trying to figure out whether that will work better for us. Do we need to support it? All of that kind of stuff. So there is no doubt in my mind that you can actually build such things out of the center that you have. And the key thing is, like we've talked about, you need to hire the talent with the right mindset, with the right skill set. Those are probably three things I would say, right? Hire the right people, with the product mindset, with the right skill set, and I think you will actually do very well. And empowering these people to those people that you hire, to really understand the meaning of why they're doing what they're doing, and then get them to understand that, and they will love what they're doing. And to me, the biggest thing, you know I've been in the industry 40 years, and I still get up in the morning, and I want to get to work as quickly as possible, because you as long as you like what you're doing, I think that is the biggest thing. And then if you have that, you will actually build that kind of innovation from your centers. Plenty of examples, for us to look at.
Yes, absolutely, Deepak. And these, perspectives have really helped us to actually look ahead to the wholesome perspective of global product leaders driving this innovation, talent, and tech from India worldwide. And there was a lot of questions, queries, and doubts, but I believe that all of them have been answered. As this session has really given us plenty to think about, not just the valuable insights shared, but also continuing the dialogue on how we can drive innovation, talent, and tech from India worldwide. And with that, we wrap up this highly insightful session on global product leaders driving innovation, talent, and tech from India worldwide. Thank you so much once again, Deepak, for such an empowering and thought provoking session. It was really an absolute pleasure hosting you and hearing your expertise.
Thank you, Kushi. Thank you so much for having me. I really had a lot of fun, interacting and talking through this topic. Hopefully, everyone liked it. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and look forward to connecting in the future.
Yes. And a heartfelt thanks as well to all our wonderful participants for your engagement and thoughtful questions, which made today's session a great success. The session has been recorded and the recording will soon be available on techgig.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in our upcoming sessions. Thanks a lot, Deepak, for joining and giving your amazing and very insightful perspectives on this particular topic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day ahead.
You too, you too.